Hello, my beauties and bees, and welcome again to another installment of Cryptic Corner, where we explore the unexplained, the supernatural, the paranormal and hidden, the mysterious, the alien, the accursed, and the forbidden. And I've been focusing more on cryptids more and more and more on this section of the show. I'm actually thinking about just making this a cryptid section anymore, and moving anything else over into a sort of realm of its own, and maybe elbowing into the sci-fi thing a little bit instead of doing. We'll still cover the woo-woo stuff over there at sci-fi, which we'll see. I'm going to start leaning that more towards woo as well. But I just been thinking that there's enough cryptids to stand alone. Just stand alone. I don't know though. I don't even know what I would call the other segment, so it's just something I've been thinking about because I've been like doing a lot of cryptids. I feel like doing cryptids. I feel like covering cryptozoology. I feel like that's my calling. So today, first of all, last week we had the thylacine, the Tasmanian wolf, or Tasmanian tiger, depending on what common name you prefer for it. But we talked about it, and I was thinking while I was down there in Tasmania looking at the maps and stuff, that, oh, hey, did we get a raid? Where'd we get a raid from? Thank you. Who's raiding? Sumami, if you didn't hear, I was just in here lamenting so much that I missed your thing last night. I had this migraine. I nuked my brain. I woke up and it was like 3 a.m. I messaged you, but of course you were probably fast asleep in your little. I assume you sleep in a basket with a bunch of cats. I took a big basket. That's how the Sumami sleeps in my head, like I'm with her cat with all her kitties. Anyway, good morning. Yeah, I'm so sad that I missed it. Thanks for the raid, though. Anyway, while I was down there looking at the maps, and I was like, why haven't I talked about New Zealand at all on Cryptic Corner? I looked back through my video history, and I really never covered, at least not in this capacity. I covered on Paleo Peak a few times because there's some cool fossils down there. Don't you do it. We did the St. Bathans Island. That's actually going to be relevant to what we're covering today. But New Zealand has a lot of cryptids, a lot of weird animals. Some that were reported by early settlers that were like never seen again, or early explorers, but were never seen again. And that's kind of what we're going to focus on today. Now, some of these overlap with mythology and with other. With other creatures that you might associate with more the spirit realm than with the animal world, so to speak. And I mean, today we're going to be looking at one that kind of toes that line in a few places, and we can't even say it's one because it's divided into, there's like 3 or 4 different names that we're going to go over for something very close or very similar, and it can overlap with some sea serpent stuff as well. It gets really wild. New Zealand's mythology and their cryptozoology by extension are pretty far out there. So we'll be revisiting New Zealand again very soon. So New Zealand's giant enigmatic lizard. There are 90 species of lizards currently known in New Zealand. In New Zealand, most are not of any impressive size, and yet from Cook's first arrival in New Zealand, strange tales of large lizards have passed down to fairly recent times. One of these lizards, the Kumi lizard, was apparently of impressive size when Cook arrived in Queen Charlotte Sound in 1773. Tawahuru, a local chief, told Cook of an enormous lizard and gave him a drawing of the beast. These giant lizards apparently lived in the trees and were greatly feared by the Maori. There were also reports, however, given to early European settlers of a 5 to 6 foot lizard, which the Maori also hunted and ate. And I just want to say something about this article while I look at it and how ugly it is. This is a tripod site. This is New Zealand Cryptozoologist Zero.tripod.com. So this is like really old. It's been in my tabs for a long time too, because I couldn't find any other reports about it other than, you know, what you see in Wikipedia here, which is really just almost a stub of an article. There's not much here, and it says basically the same stuff with less flourish, so I'm going to read it from here. In 1875, a strange lizard-like animal has been found in a flooded river in, I'm going to try these names, I'm going to do my best at the names, and you guys just have to bear with me. Hokianga. I think I actually did pretty good there. But the local Maori, out of fear of the animal, hacked it to pieces. From the same area emerged the reported sighting of an 18-inch lizard, yellowish in color, which slid down into the water when discovered and was lost among the boulders of the Hokianga River. Yeah, tripods still around. Who knew, right? Tripods still exist. In 1875, also saw Mr. F.W. Hutton present a paper on supposed ribs of the kumi. The paper spoke of the discovery of a ramus of a lower jaw of a pleurodont lizard from the Ernsklu. Ernsklu. I think let's go with Ernsklu. Ernsklu Cave in Central Otago. Otago? I'm going to go with Otago on that one. Good morning, Dave. In the same cave... Oh, where was I? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, the ramus seems to give foundation to the at least subfossil existence of the kumi lizard. In the same cave, vertebral... What am I doing today? I'm reading like I've been called on in class and I'm standing up in front of everybody. In the same cave, a vertebral rib that also appeared to be from the same animal was found. At the New Zealand Institute meeting on September 20th, 1898, mentions were made of a large, strange reptile allegedly seen near Gisborne. I guess we need to get a map up and look at where some of these places are, huh? Gisborne. Let's head on to Gisborne, New Zealand on the map. All right, coming on over. There we are. All right, I don't really need that. I need this. See what kind of... So here's Gisborne. We're on the southeast side of the island. And what kind of... Now, obviously, the habitat might not be the same now as it was back then, but what kind of habitat are we looking at? Kind of wildlife. So, a good idea to do is like drop yourself at maybe here in like the Long Brush Reserve. See what kind of natural habitat we're dealing with. Does this look like home for a giant lizard? If I was a giant lizard, I'd be pretty stoked to live here. Look at all this tall grass and lots of trees. Lots of tree cover. This looks like it'd be paradise if you were a giant lizard, doesn't it? Come out here and lay on this walkway to bask in the sun. They're not talking too big though. They said like 18 inches. Anyway, let's get back to the report. Where was I? Okay, Gisborne. Furthermore, in September of that same year, in Arohana, a bushman working on a station was confronted by a 5-foot-long gigantic lizard, which advanced towards him. So Arohana. Mount Arohana? Woo, we zoomed. Where's that take us to? Still on the eastern side of the North Island. Looks like, yeah, not too far north of where we were. What kind of mountains are we looking at? Because mountains in New Zealand can mean a lot of things. Sometimes they're just big, they're like literally pillars of stone sticking out of the ground, and sometimes they're actual, montane hills like this. Yeah, so we're looking like genuine mountains, but they'll call like stone pillars and stuff jutting up out of the earth mountains too. We're on top of this mountain here. I don't see. Now I can see they got solar panels up here. Looking around here, definitely seems like big green forested valleys where wildlife might thrive. Obviously this place hasn't even been touched by too much industry. I don't see a lot of industry around. Actually looks pretty rural and untamed as far as the eye can see. Maybe a few patches here and there when I looked over. I was looking way out over here. Where was it? There was some areas like, well, that's just the side of a mountain. I guess I was looking at that patch right there and this patch down here that looked like they may have been clear cut, but everything else looks pretty dang natural. All right. Keep losing my spot every time I jump over to the map, though. We're looking at the 5-foot lizard. Then we looked at, okay, the animal then subsequently fled into a rata tree. Leisner, the owner of the station where the animal was sighted, and a party of men went in search of the animal. They managed to photograph some footprints, but did not come across the actual animal. Right. Another large lizard mentioned is referred to as the Ngarara. I have a bigger section on this guy that we might go look at here in a minute, but it's fun to say Ngarara. Anyway. It is described as being bigger than a tuatara, about 2 or 3 feet in length, was said to burrow, had a serrated dorsal crest and prominent teeth, which caused the upper lip to slightly project forward. There was a smaller species of this lizard that measured around 18 inches, reminiscent of the animal seen at the Hokianga River. The larger species of Ngarara preferred the Manuka scrub, while the smaller species was to be found around streams and easily took to the water. From what we can gather, both the larger species seemed to have been semi-arboreal, while the smaller appears to have preferred a semi-amphibious lifestyle. From the size and the habitat of these lizards, they would appear to be closely allied to the Varanus species of lizard from Australia. I don't know where you're getting that inference from. I mean, maybe the footprints. I didn't see the footprints, though. Where were this taken at? That was the Arohana footprints from... Let's see if there's any evidence of those and how they stack up against actual Varanid footprints, Arohana footprints, lizard. Now let's see if they even exist, and I don't think they do, but I will show them to you. Oh, not that. That's for later. We're gonna go like this. So these are lizard footprints, but if you look, there's Arohana footprints, lizard. Nothing really that it looks like it would be the footprints to me. Just a lot of pop art that people have thrown together, and maybe a cave drawing of a monitor lizard. Is this from Is this from New Zealand, though? I think that's just from Australia. Matubarusaurus, that's Australia, yeah. And New Zealand used to be part of this bigger continent called Zealandia that included like New Caledonia and stuff. Now, we'll get into that more in detail in a minute. But see, this is what I was talking about. This site, this tripod site. Check it out. It switched sides on me. Now the freaking text is behind the behind my chat. Now check this out. If I refresh it, it should hop back over. Yeah. There we go. And I don't know why it does that. If it sits too long, it pops over there. It's super weird. Let's finish up this article, though. Yeah, from the size and habitat, it says they think they're a varanid, but I don't think that they're necessarily have to be a varanid. New Zealand has a lot of other lizard clades that could thrive in these habitats as well. It may have had relatives that thrived in these habitats. Okay, well, with the diversity of lizards in New Zealand, it would not be surprising to find the evolution of some form of monitor lizard in this country. Perhaps the fossil record still waits to be discovered, or even the animal itself in some remote bush area. If crocodiles could once live here, as supported by the find of the jawbone in Otago, why not a monitor lizard of the size described? Yeah, we have the jawbone here. Isn't it cute? And that's the St. Bathans Island fauna that I was talking about. They pan this freaking area and just find all these little fossils of all these different animals that once lived in New Zealand. This fossilized jawbone fragment is from an extinct crocodile that may have reached around 3 meters in length. At this time, the climate of New Zealand and Australia were similar, and they had many species in common. Since then, New Zealand's climate has cooled and mountains have formed, leading to differences in New Zealand's life forms. So yeah, New Zealand did used to have crocodiles at one point. It's part of Gondwanaland, and Gondwanaland is the home field of the crocodilians, and the New Caledonia, I think Fiji maybe, also had their own endemic species of crocodiles. The one from New Caledonia I actually did a video on that too, the Mikosukids. They lived up in trees, and they lived until fairly recently, so they were very similar in description to this lizard, but they lived in New Caledonia. Let me see if I can find my video where I covered that, and we'll pull that up real quick. Oh, not there. We're gonna go here. This will take just a moment. Let's see, Miko Sukids. There we are. It was a short video too. So let me pull that over here for ya. Blow it up. This is like old-timey Paleo Peak. I started shortening my intros after this. It's like, why is it even... Hi, Carol. Thanks for coming. Really appreciate you being here. Thank you, everybody else, for sticking around for this last little segment here. That's longer than palate cleanser, as we call it. It's there. Super in the southern hemisphere, super closely related to modern crocodiles. They were called Mikosukas or Mikosukids. There's a few different species on them, and they were. This group was prevalent in the southern hemisphere, in the old Gondwanaland, if you will.
Let me speed her up a bit.
And they died out everywhere except for mainly in Oceania. A large species did live in Australia too. Let me get this pulled up here so y'all can see what I'm talking about. Mikosukas, yeah, I'm just pulling up the wiki article so you guys can see. It's pretty basic stuff. Quikana was the big one. That's the one a lot of people think about when they talk about this group of crocodiles, because they were zyphodonts, which means their teeth weren't the teeth of like a
an aquatic ambush predator like a saltwater crocodile or crocodiles, modern crocodiles in general. There's no crocodile with teeth like this alive today because their teeth are meat shearing. These were hyper predators. They were terrestrial crocodiles with meat shearing teeth. That Australia, they died out with the rest of the megafauna. They lived alongside Megalania, the giant monitor lizard. Obviously, saltwater crocodiles were around at this time too. There was also the Thylax Cleo, the marsupial lion, if you will. A lot of huge carnivores this thing was living alongside in Australia. But when Australia got visited by humans, we started to wipe out all these magnificent giants and left hardly any trace of them as well, unfortunately. So what we have known is from little scattered fragments like this today. But we were able to build a good phylogenetic tree of them and give an idea of what the groups look like. Now here's a map of where we're able to find evidence of these organisms.
All right,
and their
come on. Where's
dominance
the,
in their
treatments?
In their some point in the last 4,000 years. So you're talking within the time that scene of New Caledonia, which became extinct at some point in the last 4,000 years, and expectus from the Holocene of New Caledonia, which became extinct at some point in the last 4,000 years. So you're talking within the time that within historic time on this 4,000 years ago is not. I mean, you're looking at Mesopotamia in full bloom, the pyramids, things like that being already established, and there are these terrestrial and arboreal, because some of these species are thought to have lived in trees based on the structure of their claws. So arboreal and tree crocs that are out there in these Pacific islands, right, in modern time. But these islands New Caledonia was a wild place. It had giant horned turtles and stuff. Up until this time, it had this really almost
So New Caledonia was pretty lit. It had giant tree crocodiles. And it used to be part of the same continent that New Zealand is, called Zealandia. So, just food for thought on that. Oh, but jump back over again. Look at that. But I think we're done here. We're done with this. And this is just, the Wikipedia article about the Kumi lizard. All right, and then, we looked at that. And that's that strange Australia. All right, so the Ngarara, however you say it, Ngarara. Well, it has the little thing above the Ngarara, maybe Ngarara, because it has to me that makes the A say its name, right? I mean, that's like little kid talk, but when you see the umlaut over top of the A, it says A. So Ngarara, I like that. That's just the Maori word for reptile too, though. You got to keep that in mind. See, and there's like, you can see kind of how how Zealandia, and it pulled in, Fiji was part of it. They were all one big continent. There's still a continent. There's still a continent there, but it's the only parts of it that are still sticking out of the water are these parts. But it used to be above the water. In Maori folklore, the Ngarara were large reptiles that looked like lizards, especially similar to tuataras, which aren't lizards but do look like lizards. That's a Sphinodon punctuatus, and they are New Zealand's the only place in the world where you can find Sphinodons, and they're not lizards. They're lepidosaurs in the same group with lizards and snakes, but they're their own thing. They still have a third eye on top of their head. That's how, and I'm talking like a real eye, like it has a retina and stuff, I believe. That the tuatara, I believe, is the biggest. This is live. We're live, Native Atheists. The tuatara is the biggest reptile in New Zealand right now. And it wouldn't surprise me to find out that there were giant tuataras in New Zealand until fairly recently that filled other niches and ecological niches. Even that, first contact, that there was sightings or reports of them at least. And then later settlers, by the time that we settled, they were gone. The Maori were in a sort of a dearth situation by the time that, by this 1773, was it? Would have been Cook. Yeah. We'll worry about the sightings here though. But yeah, there would have been. They had wiped out like the moas. All the moas were gone, so that food source was gone. They had wiped out or driven to just the far reaches of the mountains and valleys. They'd driven out all the other flightless birds as well, the kiwis and giant flightless parrots and stuff like that. And there were no mammals native to New Zealand other than bats. And the cool thing about the bats in New Zealand, I'm going off on a tangent here, you just haven't put up with me. The cool thing about the bats in New Zealand is that they were they're the only bats that they fold their membrane completely in, so they become like a fully quadrupedal organism that lives on the forest floor and runs around on the forest floor, filling a sort of insectivorous ground-dwelling niche like a shrew, which is interesting for a bat to do, and they're pretty big too. And potentially they could have been, or the fossils that we have show that they grew a lot bigger in the past too. So potentially they were around until humans showed up too. Although the St. Bathan's Island fauna is a lot older than that, a lot older. But it's as far as the extinction of the big bats in New Zealand, it's hard to trace. Bats are one of those animals that doesn't leave a great fossil record, unfortunately. Which is kind of odd because you think they would, considering how much they live in caves. I guess they just don't die in caves very often. I don't know. The Maori legend, Ngarara, was descendant from Punga, son of Tangaroa. This is gonna tie my tongue knots doing this show today. Who is the god of the sea? Descendants of Punga are said to be ugly, repulsive things. Maori people feared Ngarara because they were linked with Hero, god of darkness, evil, and death. However, they were also seen as guardians and were released near burial caves to watch the dead. Then, let's see. There are many Maori traditions used to explain the origins of lizards. One such legend, a terrifying giant reptile named T. Ngarara Huarua, maybe, was burned to death. In its death, the scales escaped and became lizards. Okay. We got some sightings here, though. In the late 19th century, there were numerous sightings of large Ngarara. In 1875, a large reptile with 6 legs was captured near Hokianga. The Maori who caught it were horrified by its appearance and chopped it to bits. We talked about that in that previous article. In 1898, a Maori bushman reported seeing the reptile, 1.5 meters in length. That's the same one we saw with the alleged footprints. They got a citation here on the Wikipedia, or on the, this isn't Wikipedia, this is like Cryptopedia or something, but the citation number 4. So that's going to be this site here. And I'm going to plug this in a different window because I don't, if it's like porn or something now, I don't want to. Do they have pictures of the footprints? I'm just looking for any pictures of these footprints that they allege were taken. I have not seen them. If you find anything that shows these footprints being real or has pictures of them, I would love to see them. So I'm really good at this. It's one of my superpowers is tracking critters and identifying critters. So, Sumami, the way that I learn my English is that if there's an umlaut over the A, and the A says its name, so I say Maori. Maori. But if I'm saying it wrong, I could be saying it wrong for sure. But that's the way that I was always told to use the umlaut. Was when it's an A, it makes it say its name. But I'm definitely willing to be wrong about that. I smoke a lot of weed too, though, so I mean that's fair. All right, explanation. There has been no scientific evidence found to suggest that giant reptiles told in Maori folklore, Maori folklore, existed. While these may have been just been legend, they may have been based off sightings of lizards and geckos found in the area. Depictions of the Ngarara are similar to the Tuatara. The term Ngarara was used to describe these lizards as early as 1842. It may have also been based off the Delcourt's giant gecko, which is Haplodactylus delcourti, the largest known of all geckos, measuring 14.6 inches, which is a huge gecko. That's a gecko this big, you know. And it is now extinct and only known from one specimen, which is a really cool specimen too. You want to see it? I'll show it to you because it's super cool. Here we go. Let me see. It's taxidermied. So it looks absolutely monstrous, though. That's a big ass lizard. For a gecko, that's a massive gecko. Let me see if I can find a different angle. Yeah, let's look at this one. There you go. Look at that monster. Isn't that pretty nifty? Oh, could you imagine having something like that come running? And remember, it's this big. It's not. Where'd that other picture go? Did I close it? I think I closed it. Yeah, remember, it's a huge animal. You saw it's about as big as a man's torso. It's big. It's bulky. Yeah. I wish. Yeah, here we go. Here's some comparisons to the largest extant geckos. Just for comparison. That's our extant largest gecko, the New Caledonian giant gecko. In comparison to, that's the biggest one we have the biggest species. And just a comparison of their bones and stuff. Zoom in a little bit so you can see what we're looking at. But yeah, that's the taxidermied specimen. That's all we have of it. Pretty cool though, huh? The largest known gecko is now extinct, known from one specimen. All right, and then, yeah, oh yeah, I didn't close it. Here it is. So I mean, I don't know if this picture does it justice, but when it comes to geckos, you usually think of a gecko able to sit on your forearm, right? Like your forearm. This guy's big enough to sit on your torso, like a monitor lizard. And they were if they're like the tokay gecko, I don't know much about their ecology, but they would have been hyper carnivores too, and would pack a nasty bite because we saw the teeth, right? Anyway, so yeah, New Zealand has lots of giant mythical beasts, and yeah, here's a nice blog I found about the different mythical monsters and stuff from and then some of the historical sightings as well with names. Meanwhile, the story of the Kumi sighting kept cropping up as evidence of early popular interest in the question. There is the story of Hugh Carleton, one day in 1875, rushing excitedly into the office of James Hector with the remark, "At last, we have really got it." I don't know, that sounded very American. Did anybody... Did we fix my speech on the Maori? Okay, I watched a video and it's actually of an actual Maori guy explaining how to say it. It is Mao, but the re is like fancy sounding. Not quite rolling, but almost. Maori. I would like to name it Sugar Plum. Yeah, when it looks like it could eat your cat though, or at least it would be able to eat Butters. You want to explain to your mom that the kitty got that your pet giant gecko Maori. Okay. Yeah, I was saying it like a dirty colonizer. I say everything like a dirty colonizer. Stupid American upbringing. He was referring to reports of he was referring to the reported capture of the Hakianga of a strange animal with 6 legs. Yeah, we're gonna dig into this a little bit more here. So before we get too far though, this is what I wanted to watch. This is actually the video I originally had set up for Cryptic Corner today, but I decided to dive a little bit deeper because this was kind of a shallow exploration. But let's go.
In the 1880s, sightings of a saurian monster abounded in New Zealand. Local accounts and legends of an ancient monster helped fan the flames of the mystery. But what was the creature that terrorized New Zealand in the 1880s? The original inhabitants of New Zealand are known as the Maori, but when the West came to this new frontier of islands,
he said it Maori. He didn't say fancy R, but he did say Mao. So I'm gonna go with that, Maori.
By 1881, New Zealand already boasted a non-native population of almost 490,000. 5 years later, the nation reached a significant milestone. For the first time in its history, a majority of the non-Maori population living on the island had been born there. They weren't immigrants. Yet despite campaigns to bring in more women, young men continued to dominate the population, and many longed for a taste of one of the world's final frontiers. The rustic island continued to have trouble attracting women and families, although local governments tried various schemes to do so, but they didn't take. Starting in 1879, New Zealand experienced an economic depression. Unemployment spiked, and many individuals moved away.
So sorry, Star Song. Let me pull that back.
Attracted by the bright lights of Australia. Although silver linings existed, such as the first successful exportation of meat stored in ice to Great Britain, a financial recovery wouldn't take hold until the 1890s. In that time, the nation's frontier remained filled with possibility as explorers continued to push into its impenetrable terrain. Along the way, unexplained sightings started to emerge. Into this climate of growing pains came a fascinating story that placed the world's attention on New Zealand. It contained all of the intrigue and suspense of an excellent cryptid tale, strange sightings, local legends, and eventually physical evidence.
There are folk tales born out.
But no attack. There's not been an attack by a giant lizard in New Zealand.
Out of some collective fear of the unknown.
Well, how many folk tales do you know that could eat a Boy Scout leader and a biologist?
In 1886, slaughter yard employees made a gruesome discovery near Hamilton, New Zealand. Something had taken a sheep carcass from the meat hook where it hung. The sheep's remains were picked clean of all flesh. Beyond the devoured creature, few clues of what happened remained at the scene. No hair samples where the thieving animal had brushed against a fence post or tree existed, and it left behind no waste to study and analyze. But locals did find a trail of unidentifiable animal tracks. Speculation soon gripped the nation as
like that they just showed. That's an ungulate. I want to say maybe an elk. Yeah, that looks like an elk track to me. Now they did release elk. They did release elk into New Zealand, but I don't think this is actually supposed to be the track, but like, I don't know. This is an elk track. Like I said, I'm really, this is one of my superpowers. So, yeah, I think that we can safely say that's an elk or some kind of cervid. Could be a sheep, but I don't think so. Different. So there's, New Zealand has a lot of different breeds of sheep, but they usually don't leave this bottom print here when a sheep steps, like a cervid does.
did find a trail of unidentifiable animal tracks. Speculation soon gripped the nation as whispers of an aquatic reptilian monster emerged. On October 1st, these
That's a cool movie. If you haven't seen The Shape of Water, good stuff.
whispers entered the public record as the New Zealand Herald ventured an account of the mysterious happenings, beginning with the understatement, "This creature's appearance has created quite a sensation." Despite the lack of clues, some locals quickly latched on to sensational conclusions about the incident. Men armed themselves ready to hunt the strange creature. Based on scant evidence left by the so-called monster, some New Zealanders claimed it pointed to undoubted traces of a saurian monster. The term saurian monster refers
Yeah, doesn't we look at the antediluvian art of the pre-Victorian era, the pre-Enlightenment area perception of prehistoric animals. So they were all there was no sun because of the dense clouds, and they were constantly fighting and eating each other, just giant reptiles at war, non-stop before the Great Flood. You see, we got some pterosaurs over here, picking on the remains of what I believe is a mosasaur. Got some a couple of plesiosaurs attacking another mosasaur here, and something quite serpentine slithering through the background.
to a lizard-like creature. In other words, anything from a crocodile to a reptilian cryptid. Interestingly, science may have contributed to the hysteria. How? According to researchers Darren Nash and Charles Paxton, the discovery of new marine
Darren Nash.
reptile fossils appeared to inspire upticks in 19th century reports of sea monsters. Reports also morphed to reflect the latest scientific finds. Nash and Paxton concluded that after 1850, the traditional sea serpent concept was replaced by a monster featuring 4 or more fins and a prominent neck. This neck was a feature visible in the skeletons of mosasaurs and plesiosaurs. But New Zealand had a severe credibility problem when it came to saurian monster claims.
Now, I said before that I hadn't really covered too much about New Zealand, but when it comes to sea monsters, New Zealand's the oceans around New Zealand have always been a hotbed for sea monster sightings of all kinds, whether it's squid-like monsters, giant sharks, plesiosaurs, mosasaurs. New Zealand's just rich with it. I don't know why. The Southern Ocean is a treacherous place full of mythical monsters, I guess.
Of the 110 lizard species native to the country, all fall into 2 reptilian families, geckos and skinks. These reptiles rarely surpass half a foot. How could one grow large enough to steal and devour a sheep carcass suspended from a meat hook? The Waikato Times wrote, "Crocodile or what?" To be sure, the idea of a crocodile making his way unobserved from warmer latitudes across the ocean and taking up his residence in the vicinity of Hamilton is very laughable.
Yeah, very unlikely. Let's see. Let's look at Hamilton real quick since we saw the map up. Hamilton, New Zealand. Also, not too far from where we were before. We're more towards the west coast. We were over here before. There's Gisborne, and there's the mountain that we were on previously. So, still on the North Island, which would make sense for a reptile to be able to thrive more in the North Island. Because you gotta think of like upside down. Like, it gets more temperate the more south you go. This is all pretty temperate, though. But the North Island's, it's on parallel with like Melbourne or I say Melbourne. I gotta say it we gotta say this one properly too. Melbourne. It's not born. The born identity. Yeah, that's Hamilton. All right, continuing on.
Sightings of the saurian monster exploded. One of the most famous reports came from a farm in Hamilton owned by one Mr. Castleton on October 1st, 1886. According to his wife, the first of their sons...
Oh, they got this jams playing while I'm trying to pay attention to what you're saying. It's stacking me with these groovy jams.
To spot the strange creature got chased back into the house. When the boy finally made it inside, she thought he might faint from sheer panic, but that wasn't the last encounter. According to Mr. Castleton, his sons had a second experience with the creature as it swam by in the river. The boys kept watch for the animal after the initial incident and frequently stood at a spot where they could see a long section of the creek. They observed a
This is not the creek, by the way. This is just a creek.
commotion in the water and saw the creature swimming down the creek. Apparently, its head was the only thing above water. In the article detailing the events, the local constable expressed complete faith in the boys' account. The Herald
Yeah, that is right, Melbourne, Australia. Yeah.
also refuted claims by other newspapers that the boys had witnessed something else, like feral pigs. They noted that both boys regularly hunted escaped pigs that stumbled onto their father's farm, making it difficult to believe they could be so easily mistaken. That said, the paper also provided Castleton with a clear motive for faking the sightings, stating that he believed its capture and exhibition would be a significant source of income. During a follow-up report by the New Zealand Herald on October 2, 1886, the Castleton boys provided a detailed description of the so-called monster. The older of the two boys described the creature as measuring roughly 4.5 feet long with a tapered rear. The boys estimated the head comprised
And we're going to explore that.
half the length of the body, which they claimed was covered in brownish-colored scales. When asked to compare the saurian monster to the other animals they'd seen in the New Zealand wilderness, one boy described a foot-long lizard he'd crossed paths with the previous year. They showed journalists the location where they claimed they'd seen the creature. One reporter described it as a wild, out-of-the-world spot. The story contained all the elements of an ideal cryptid sighting. The New Zealand Herald came to a fascinating hypothesis by interweaving the boy.
Now, when it comes to, yeah, see that, just like a good colonist always laughing at the native beliefs. So that's the thing too, when you learn about cryptids and cryptozoology, a lot of people just dismiss the idea that, to the native population. I use the examples in South America when I did my mystery cats of South America. Will have different names, and it's a different animal to them. For like for instance, like a black jaguar is a different species, and they didn't have a concept of species. These were children of gods. The animals were. But the jaguar, the black jaguar, had different origins than the spotted rosetted jaguar, and when we look at their history and their mythology through a colonizer lens, it's easy to be like, oh yeah, they believed in all these wild different animals and stuff, when really they just had a different way of categorizing the animals that are in their environment. And this is a good example of that, because the word that Ngarara is their word for reptile too, and all the reptiles have the same origin myth, so it's hard to parse out anything other than they were mentioning that there's some kind of record of large reptiles in the history of the continent, which again, Zealandia, which we have evidence for that there were large reptiles there. So whether these are folk memories of actual reptiles that were encountered, whether they found remains of giant reptiles that were encountered, whether these are exaggerations of tuatara and giant geckos that once lived on the island for sure until modern times, or whether they are completely fabricated deities. I shouldn't say completely fabricated, origin myth deities for where reptiles came from. They had the little ones had to come from a big one, sort of thing. Whether any of those are the origins for that, looking at it through a colonizer's lens can dampen our credulity of whether these things existed or not, because you want to say, oh no, this is a story about a monster and not not folklore about the origins of lizards.
Boys' statements with native accounts of a very large animal like an eel, which would come out of the water at times and chase people. The local Maori called this fantastical creature the taniwha. The Maori first arrived from eastern Polynesia to New Zealand.
Taniwha, now we're getting into it. Taniwha is the animal that really strikes my interest out of all of these.
Through canoe expeditions in the 13th and 14th centuries. After centuries of inhabiting the islands, they developed a body of folklore about supernatural creatures, including the taniwha. Lurking in the nation's lakes, caves, oceans, and rivers, taniwha ranged in appearance. Some Maori legends describe dragon-like winged reptiles. Others suggest sea serpents or even whales and porpoises. But did the Maori see these mythological creatures as actual flesh and blood animals? According to a letter to the Wellington Press, the general impression among our earliest settlers was that natives then living, or certainly their grandfathers, had seen the Taniwha. The letter writer also noted that many Maori descriptions of the creature included details reminiscent of an alligator. In 2002, an event occurred which appears—
Well, Gondwana land, it would probably be more of a crocodile than an alligator. But I digress. There were crocodilians in Zealandia, and their remains have been found in New Zealand as well. But the temperature of New Zealand would probably be more likely to support an alligator than it would be to support a crocodile, though, because alligators can take a little bit more of a cooler temperature. But the Taniwha is also goes out to sea a bit, so it crosses the line between river monster and sea serpent in some folklore, and in those cases, the crocodile would be the more likely culprit. Lizards definitely don't. The only lizards that go out into the sea are marine iguanas.
to support the letter's first claim that the Maori saw the Taniwha as physical creatures.
I shouldn't have said that, because snakes are lizards. So, and sea snakes, the different clades of sea snakes, they are seafaring lizards as well.
Here, a tribe in Waikato opposed and permanently stopped the construction of a highway. Why? Because they said its location would destroy a local Taniwha ecosystem. Up to this point, New Zealanders thought the worst the Soren monster could do was peel the flesh from sheep. But the Maori concept of the Taniwha, a human-devouring monster, both thrilled and terrified them. According to a report that appeared in the Tame Star on October 5, 1886, a year ago, near the same spot, a native girl was found dead in a stream in that vicinity with the flesh stripped from one arm. Besides native tales of the Taniwha, more eyewitness reports surfaced. These included the account of two tourists who claimed they witnessed a strange creature swimming in the Waikato River with a head like an alligator. The Tame Star also noted that a teacher at a local school observed the alleged cryptid swimming in a sea serpent fashion in the river. The creature seemed to use its tail in the water, propelling it forward like other swimming reptiles. Had the tourist and the school teacher seen the Taniwha? No one could say for sure. What's more, people—
This is a depiction of an oarfish, which are really cool fish that swim in the water column vertically, and they have feathery things on their heads and everything. A lot of people think they're supposed to be like, well, no, gators can go into to a certain degree of brackish water. They don't have the ability to expel salt like a crocodile does, though.
People remain just as divided about sightings of the creature as they were about its identity. While newspapers like the New Zealand Herald proposed an alligator, others like the Tame Star left room for other possibilities. These possibilities included sea serpent-like creatures capable of tolerating the brackish waters of the Waikato, New Zealand's longest river. As reports continued to flood in and New Zealanders became more and more aware of the Maoris' views on the creature, a radically new version of the Sauron monster menacing the coastline emerged. Two men in canoes had an encounter with a cryptid on the Waikato River, claiming it nearly capsized their boats. How did they describe the strange creature? They reported an animal of immense size with large jaws showing jagged teeth. The body was covered with long, shaggy black hair. The Sauron monster had suddenly morphed into a—
So now we have a mammalian characteristics with fur and stuff. We get into the Waikato.
Big, hairy beast, if the two canoers were to be believed. Of course, reconciling this new description with that of earlier reports.
And there is another New Zealand cryptid that we're gonna cover for sure. That's the I'll try to say its name, but let me see if I can. Wakarito. Saurian monster. Yeah, there's the Taniwha is what we're on right now, but there's the Moahu. There's all sorts of cool cryptids from New Zealand that we're gonna have to break into, because I can't believe I've ignored this region for so long. Anyway.
Reports by the Castleton boys proved challenging. Was the beast they had seen the same as the Castleton boys? There was some doubt.
Wesley, what about the ROUSs?
Rodents of unusual size? I don't think they exist.
The boys described a large, scaly reptile, not an ebony-haired mammal. The hairy reports also conflicted with the traditional Maori accounts of the serpent or eel-like taniwha. Despite the contradictions associated with this new sighting, subsequent developments in the story appeared to bolster the last two men's claims. After months of searching, the Soren monster met its end along the coast near Raglan. According to the Patea Mail, on November 10, 1887, a Maori man in a canoe off the Raglan harbor saw a giant animal sleeping on the beach. After assembling a group of men, they approached the animal. The monster awakened, reacting by, quote, grunting, barking, and snapping its ugly jaws. After the men shot the animal, it perished on the beach. The Maori measured the creature, reporting it as 11 feet in length and 6 feet in circumference. They dragged it to the Raglan's wharf, where a crane positioned it for inspection by curious and confounded onlookers. What did the Maoris present at the wharf? Something unlike any previous eyewitness descriptions. It wasn't a crocodile or an alligator, and it didn't have a thick, black, shaggy coat. Instead, the creature bore a fine layer of fur from head to tail, along with 2 flippers and no ears.
Sounds very much like a pinniped of some stripe, doesn't it?
Journalists also noted that it had a mouth that could swallow a man, with 16 teeth in each jaw, 4 of them being like tusks. Other reports describe it as having 2 large screw-like propellers in lieu of a tail and a head like that of a leopard. It had a svelte silverish body and a stomach stuffed full of dead birds, as opposed to mutton. After the creature was captured and killed, a local settler bought its carcass. He planned to travel New Zealand, Australia, Europe, and the United States, exhibiting the ferocious taxidermy cryptid, but then news emerged that thwarted his plans. The so-called Soren monster was nothing more than a seal. A report on November 26, 1887 outed the monster as a
That's kind of what it sounds like to me.
harmless gray seal, and the Patea Mail called it a sea elephant. Gray seals don't live in New Zealand, so what gives? Researchers today hypothesize it was a case of mistaken identity. The nation boasts 2 types of seals, New Zealand fur seals and southern elephant seals. Large male fur seals measure up to 8.2 feet long, with bewhiskered heads you could
Yeah, I would say, if I had to speculate here, I would say an elephant seal. But they get vagrant leopard seals turn up in New Zealand from time to time as well.
construe as leopard-like. What about the sea elephant claim? On rare occasions, southern elephant seals visit New Zealand beaches, and adult males grow up to 16 feet long. Carnivorous marine animals, elephant seals spend 80% of their time in the water and the remainder on land. On sandy surfaces, elephant seals can outrun humans. In some respects, the southern elephant seal most closely fits aspects of each eyewitness's story. While molting, their skin can even take on a brownish scale-like appearance.
People mistaked all kinds of things back in the... I don't think that the Maori legends are about an elephant seal. I think that this particular sighting was an elephant seal, though.
But could one tear the flesh from a girl's arm? Perhaps. Seals have been known to attack and even kill humans on occasion, but incidents of such attacks are rare. Still, there's no denying an aggressive bull can do severe damage. Australian adventurer and cryptid investigator Tony Healy got in on the taniwha action in 2018. He spent 7 weeks in New Zealand, scouring the mainland and islands for cryptids. He visited locations known for taniwha sightings, although he never saw one himself. Healy isn't the only cryptozoologist exploring mythical creatures in New Zealand. The land of Kiwis proves one of the most popular geographic locations when it comes to looking for mythical creatures, from moa to kokako, large black cats, and even supposed moose.
Yes, they even have a large black cat. They have a Bigfoot in New Zealand, and they have
living in the Fiordland. The continued search for
Now, when it comes to, again, moose or elk, what have you, they did release some into New Zealand.
Strange new life has even included animals whose existence we now take for granted, like the Komodo dragon and the platypus. Many people also forget that mountain gorillas were considered the stuff of fairy tales as recently as 1902. That's when Robert von Beringa, a German captain, first verified their existence. After examining the subject in depth, what was Healy's conclusion when it came to the taniwha? The famed cryptozoologist reported, "To me, it's interesting that non-Maori have been claiming sightings of these creatures. The Maori, if I understand it right, they don't actually believe these things are flesh and blood animals, but some kind of guardian spirits. That's definitely one theory New Zealanders in 1887 didn't fully explore." Check out one of our newest videos.
I'm gonna talk about the conviction yesterday. All right, so we've covered that. Talked about that. All right, now here's this is from March 2017. This is a little bit older, but some claims that this was a saltwater crocodile. Let's see. There are Aussie pelicans in Kipara, but is the Maori, gotta say it right, Maori. I want to try to say things as correctly as possible whenever possible. The Maori Taniwa or Ngarara, based on encounters with another Aussie migrant. An old scientific study from the 1980s indicates Australian saltwater crocodiles are occasionally summer visitors to New Zealand and probably the cause of Taniwa stories. This extract from a report written by archaeologist Simon Best in 1988 lays out the case. Even so, the suggestion that New Zealand might have been a landfall at the end of such a journey would be of no more than academic interest had it not been for an incident off the North Cape of New Zealand in 1970. In the last few days of February of that year, the second officer of 252, the MV Pereira, a coastal trader of the Home Shipping Company en route from Auckland to Brisbane, was the first to spot an object in the sea over 2 miles ahead and on the starboard side of the ship. The sea was like glass, Captain Brown's personal communications, and the ship's course was altered to investigate the sighting. The captain, second mate, and bosun had a clear view of the animal at the vessel's pass, and after the Pereira reached Brisbane, Captain Brown wrote to the Marine Superintendent of Holmes Shipping Company in Auckland reporting the sighting. Part of the letter is reproduced below. About 300 miles north of... let's start that over again. About 300 miles from the North Cape and 800 miles from Brisbane, off the Wanganella Bank, we passed a crocodile about 15 foot long in broad daylight. The second mate saw it first ahead of the ship, and we passed about 20 feet off alongside the bridge. It was swimming quite strongly. We did not see its head clearly, as that part of it was the wash from the bow. Part of it was in the wash from the bow. Okay, I guess that means it was obscured by the wake. But the body appeared to be that of a crocodile. Presumably it had a crocodile's head, but if not, then your guess is as good as mine as to what it was. As the wash touched it, it sounded, showing a whitish gray belly. It had a row of triangular spiked teeth, or spiked 3 or 4 inch. I don't know where I got teeth from there. It had a row of triangular spikes, 3 to 4 inches high, running down its back on each side of its spine. I had the binoculars on it, so at that range I got a good look, and there is absolutely no chance that it was a turtle, whale, porpoise, shark, tree, or anything else but what I have described. And that's the letter from Captain C.A. Brown, Captain R. Jackson, 4/3 of 1970. A copy of this letter was sent to Dr. Turbot, then director of Auckland War Memorial Museum, and also to Professor J. Robb at the University of Auckland. Both identified the sighting as that of a specimen of C. porosus, which is the saltwater crocodile. Robb, in both a newspaper article, New Zealand Herald 1970, and later in her publication on reptiles and amphibians in New Zealand, although in the latter, the month of the sighting was incorrectly given as April. The animal is most likely to have come from the Australian coastline, nearest point of which is some 1,300 kilometers from the sighting. The southern limits of C. porosus on the east coast is about 100 kilometers north of Brisbane, although it is possible that the animal came from a considerably further north, as the crocodile population in the lower part of the east coast is not as dense as that around the top part of the country. An open ocean journey of at least 1,300 or 1,400 kilometers was thus achieved, and that the animal was still swimming strongly indicates it was by no means at the end of its tether, and barring accident could have made landfall in New Zealand in short time. Look how athletic saltwater crocs are as well. Good morning, Titan. The question arises that, assuming such an event took place, how would the animal fare in the colder climate that is of its new surroundings? Firstly, the larger the crocodile, the less it would have been affected by the cooler climate, Cott states. Size is an important factor in animals' thermal regulation with its environment. The larger the animal, the lower The larger the animal, the lower is its surface to bulk ratio, and the greater the capacity for heat storage. He also points out that as a heat source, solar radiation is far more important than air temperature. Thus, crocodiles will climb out of the water and sun itself before the air temperature has reached that of the water just left in the beginning, and left it being so delighted with the sunshine, and lieth therein so immovable that a man would take it to be stark dead. Another factor that could influence the likelihood of a successful landing is a general weather pattern. In the last 1,000-year, maximum temperatures have fluctuated up to 1.5 degrees Celsius between crest and trough, with the highest peak in the 14th century, some 0.7 degrees Celsius. Among the next highest in the 1950s. Recent temperatures, however, have been even higher. There's little doubt that a large crocodile arriving today in New Zealand coast in the summer months would be able to survive and function normally, at least until the onset of winter. If it landed in the upper part of the North Island, probably the most likely area, then it is also possible that it could survive a mild winter. Such a situation would probably mean that the animal spent more time out of the water than normal. From the sightings described above, it thus appears not only that it is possible for a large specimen of C. porosus to cross the stretch of ocean between Australia and New Zealand, but also that this event may well have occurred at some time in the past. The arrival of such a totally unknown, terrifying creature, 5 or 6 meters long and weighing up to a ton, catching its victims with bone-crushing force, and taking them out of sight into another world is surely the stuff which legends are made. New Zealand, however, is not the only Polynesian island group with such concerning giant man-eating lizards. Yeah, you can read more about those here. We may have to revisit like New Caledonia and stuff soon. It's not the first time crocodiles have appeared to have made the crossing. In early February 1869, newspaper reported an alligator in the coastal lake in North Wellington. A more detailed account follows. In 1886, there were reports of a child's arm being bitten off and a crocodile sighting in the Waikato River, which means this report from Taranaki could have been the body of one of these. Giant dinosaur, long as a bus, head like a dragon, and at large in New Zealand. In 1989 report, Scientific American, a study confirmed another crocodile had been seen literally at the tip of New Zealand's North Cape. Saltwater crocodiles often frequent estuaries, lagoons, and mangroves, but animals in some populations spend all of their time at sea. Extraliminal records from the Cocos Islands southwest of Sumatra, from Fiji, and even from 48 kilometers of North Cape in New Zealand, demonstrate the ability to travel far out to sea. All right, so we're talking about swimming from Brisbane. So we got out here the Norfolk Island. Let's see, does Norfolk Island have salties? Saltwater crocodile. Interesting. Having a look at this this island here. So I'm thinking like island hopping would probably be a more reasonable way to, because there's nothing really out here. Talking about 48 kilometers off this coast. We have Lord Howe Island here. That's where our giant wettas live. That we love. We found them on this little rock here and brought some more back. But yeah, I mean, I don't see, like, this is about the line that in the right season. Yeah. And they get all the way out to there too. All right, so what are my thoughts on the Taniwa? Well, check this out. I don't think there's any reason to have the audio on. Hold on. Ember, saltwater crocodiles definitely live in the ocean. Yeah, absolutely. They might help explain how the ancient Polynesians found the islands, not just crocs, but any migrating critter. Follow them. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. A moose can dive 20 feet underwater to munch on seagrass. That's cray. Yeah, the moose are often fall prey to orcas. Hagfish are the worst of the worst. Look at the size of that. Yeah, and these types of eels will crawl out of the water. They will come out on land. Man, this has been a long Cryptic Corner too. I thought this was going to be a short one. Look at them big old eels. That one's especially monstrous and massive. There's a smaller one slithering back there, but look at this big guy. He's as long as the cage. Absolutely massive. Huge animal. There's this Taniwa, golden Taniwa. And they actually call it Taniwa, and look, it has the 6 legs like they talked about, the six fins. See, right there, right there.
Adding my gold in the hole.
But I'll make my final case here.
This fella sticks.
I mean, come on. Look at that.
He's huge.
Amazing.
This fella sticks. He's massive.
Got a mouthful of meat. Yep. All right. So that was Cryptic Corner, the giant oh, hold on. That was Cryptic Corner, the giant reptiles of New Zealand, both in and out of the water. We got more New Zealand to come, though, so don't you worry. If you like New Zealand, then stick around. Of course, if you like cryptids at all, we're going to be jumping all over the globe, all over every continent, every island, where strange and unknown creatures dwell. We will be exploring. Thank you for sticking with me through this episode of Cryptic Corner. Please remember to be kind, take care, and we'll see you next time.